Welcome to the Grid Mod Pod, brought to you by AEIC. In this podcast, you'll hear from the utility industry's top operations leaders on how their companies are working to modernize and improve our ever-evolving power grid. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Grid Mod Pod, your go-to podcast for all things related to grid modernization and the future of energy management. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Cook, the Vice President of Technical Strategy at AEIC, and I'm thrilled to have Tim McHugh, the Manager of Troubleshooters at Eversource. We're going to really sit back and listen to an awesome project, innovation, and all of it come to be, and the idea of restoring power and bringing the value of the innovative minds that come together to develop the tools to increase the reliability and the overall capability to bring our customers back quickly. So with that, thank you, Tim, for joining us. Could you just take a moment to introduce yourself and give us a bit of your background?
Liz, thanks for having me. I am the manager for the troubleshooters for Eversource in New Hampshire, and I have 35 years in the industry and 24 years in the restoration world as far as the troubleshooter organization is concerned.
Okay, and so Eversource is, how many customers approximately do you guys serve in New Hampshire? Just from a perspective. Yeah, like roughly.
600,000 maybe?
I resonate with that number. Yeah, you do know that. You did. I resonate with that number. So quite a lot of customers, I guess. And I think one thing about the grid modernization journey, unless we say it out loud, people don't realize that everything we do when we get up, we go to work, and we are doing our tasks that are assigned, and really we're serving the customer. And then also I know as a part of the utility space is at the forefront of everything we do is safety. So how we are looking at the problems, identifying where it could be, where it could go. Safety is at the forefront of all of our decisions. And I know that you can relate to that specifically, and maybe the driver for some of the project conception that we're going to talk about. So in the current landscape that you're in, and really all of the experience that you have, I would love you to take the opportunity to kind of share the project that you've kind of spearheaded and really drove in Eversource. So what can you tell about it?
So what we've done is we've created two temporary solutions to outage restoration, and very temporary, primarily used by our first responders troubleshooters up here in New Hampshire. And we are using them in all three states. The rapid poles, we have a backfeed trailer, which is a mobile primary riser pole that we can install anywhere that we deem necessary when we have an area of large damage and an unacceptable ETR, we call it. We will isolate.
Wait, ETO?
ETR.
ETR, well, what is estimated time of restoration?
Restoration, correct.
We're a very acronym-heavy industry, so I like to spell out any acronyms you throw out. So would you call it an unacceptable ETR? All relative.
Right. So, especially at Eversource, it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset of every outage we think is an unacceptable duration. That's why we're always trying to improve on our processes to try to restore as quickly and safely as possible. So
I just want to take a moment just from our listeners and really those that are outside the industry looking in, and really kind of, I don't think the line workers and the troubleshooters really get to speak volumes to, the work that you're speaking of is the grid at times. We all love it to run 365s 24/7, but there are areas outside of our control that cause the power to be lost within all our homes. And just to kind of create a visualization here, we have the line workers that are effectively out there when the lines go down. And so when the lines go down, it's a very unsafe condition. And we now have, we're all grateful for the ability for you to arrive on site, assess the situation, and ultimately put those lines back up to continue the flow of power. So what you're really speaking about is when we have storms or motor vehicle accidents or anything that may come to be that are outside the control of the operators of the grid, there are men and women that go out and ultimately have to resurrect. And so that's kind of that's the space you're speaking in, right? So you as a troubleshooter are first on site, assessing the situation, and making those quick decisions safely to really restore power in a very quick period of time. And so that's kind of where I think is really important what you guys have created. And I think for the first time in our grid mod pod, we're going to introduce what we're talking about so we can visually see this device that we're speaking of. I'll speak from the outside looking in, then you can clarify any. Is you have a truck that shows up on site and that can effectively clear out any down lines robotically, and then you have an arm that can be positioned to allow the wires to be reset on a brand new pole. Is that like the gist of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. Like, what do you do without that, right?
So it's called a rapid pole, and it's a trailer that we can get on site quickly. But once it's on site, Liz, we have the ability to technically set the equivalent of a 55-foot pole within 10 minutes. So once we have that deployed, once the line workers or troubleshooters make that scene safe, they can get that wire up and off the ground. We can, two things, obviously take care of public safety, that part, but we're also going to restore quicker. Every deployment we've used so far with the rapid pole, we have had everything up and running and secure before the pole or pole crew has arrived on site. And we've had probably 15 deployments of the rapid pole.
I'm just way more excited about this because knowing what it takes to identify down wires, we now do have technology, some of the utility space, and we're all evolving to this end goal, full situation awareness of, okay, wires down. 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, just from a general public's understanding, wires down and lights out was not truly known by the utility until customers called in and informed the utility. Now we're decades ahead. We have devices that are monitoring the system, that are literally assessing the flow of electrons. Now I'll just say, not all electric utilities, because there's some that are crawling, walking, and running in this full situation awareness. But we do have the capability and the technology to install devices to measure the current flow, to trigger signals inside the operation room on the distribution grid to say, some is just by the switch itself that monitors it, or other technology, the more granular and the better data you get, can actually locate your fault or your situation within 100 or so feet. So, Tim, being in the industry for the last couple of decades, how has that information coming to your team kind of revolutionized your approach to down wires, and then really taking this extra leap to develop this physical hardware? I mean, talk me through that transformation of going from not knowing to then having access to information, but still having to do the physical work to now, how many hours are we talking about from what it used to be to where it is 10 minutes? Talk me through that process.
Right. So, since COVID, and we knew that we had to get the lines going quickly. Everyone was working from home. Probably just went from a nuisance to a necessity that people needed. That was one of the reasons why we thought of this, is to make sure that we do.
People are working home, doing their work, they're living their lives, and they have all of their emergency equipment. Power became even more evident into the individual homes. Gotcha.
On top of that, an economic impact because everyone was working from home. So if you had extended outages, that's just unacceptable to us. So that was the reason why we came up with this idea to try to get the wire up, energized, and open the roads for public safety.
When, let's say 10, 20, 30 years ago, you would ultimately get a call and roll your truck up. What? Are we talking how many hours and how many crews from the moment of getting the call to reinstating the wires? Just to give our listeners perspective. But it could be hours?
Yes.
Could it be?
Yeah. A normal pole set is probably between 2 or 3 and 6 hours, depending on the conditions. So yeah, I think we're definitely saving time when we're deploying these.
And I think storm restoration doesn't get enough public insight or like perspective. So I'm really excited. Can you tell about this topic? That like there is scenarios where storms come through and it's not just 1 or 2 poles. Like we're talking, it could take down 5, 6, 10 poles, which then that's hours per pole. And so what you're saying is like your team effectively is like, how can we do this faster? So like, innovation, right? And you went upon, was it like engaging the vendor industry, developing and designing and really like working to develop this tool? Like, was that a part of this project from the moment you realized this is unacceptable to having the ability to deploy this 15 times? Were you part of that whole?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did a little research, reached out to a military DoD contractor who builds telescopic masts for the defense industry. And we just started talking and came up with some ideas. And we just received our 18th trailer in the Eversource territory last week. And we now have those stationed regionally in all 3 states.
And I guess, I like to think about, there are problems. And then I think a big part of the Grid Mod Pod is highlighting and developing the conversation so that others can understand what it takes and that there are solutions being created by the utility minds themselves. So, going from something of nothing to then what you just said, which I'm just going to be a mindset coach right now, is you effectively saw a need and you wanted to make a change. So you did a research that was above and beyond your everyday, rolling trucks and managing, crews and keeping the lights on. And you found someone that you can make a connection with that had somewhat of an idea of already creating something similar. And then you collaborated like minds with a vision and, set, developed this tool. And why I believe you wanted to come on the Grid Mod, which I'm so excited to have you, is to be able to share this, storyline so that other utilities see the capability and the fact that this device can be deployed across the nation, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's very exciting. And I think the more discussions and the community share around how utilities are showing up with an innovative mind is really impactful for our customers. And so I guess what Grid Mod is kind of it's a buzzword in my opinion. But if we break it down, it's the action that needs to be taken to really create the awareness that the utility itself is transforming because of all the new technologies becoming available. And as you said, it's the lifeline of society. So it's really important that we keep the lights on while this transformation happens.
Agreed.
So I guess, was there any time in your journey of developing this concept, like what was the engagement from your leadership, from external stakeholders, from the development of like anything like that you can share that really motivated and kept you moving forward to make this a reality?
Well, first of all, the support that I received from the executives here at Eversource was outstanding. The direction that I got, the support was just awesome. So I think that the deployments that we have had so far, now that it's starting to, be shown out into the industry with some of the deployments, we've been getting a lot of inquiries from other utilities to, to see what this thing's about. How easy it is to use and how fast. So it's starting to get pretty popular.
That's very awesome. And I think actually not on part of the video, but correct me if I'm wrong, you did go above and beyond of this device. Don't we also have an additional piece of equipment that you would like to share? Like, so you started this and then along came another idea. So
Right. So
can you talk about that?
Yeah, they were kind of at the same time. One is like I mentioned earlier, it's a mobile primary rise pole with a large transformer on it where we utilize our vendor generating companies, Sunbelt and Prime Power. And those guys come out and we have everything set up now. We're just plugging in a generator and we backfeed onto our system. So when we use the backfeed trailer and we have an area of damage, we isolate that area and we get everybody to start working on that zone, that clearance zone. But we go beyond that and we can deploy this PRI RIS Pole in 20 minutes. And the generator company comes out, they hook up their cables to that add-on transformer. We're ready to backfeed. So what we used to do prior to that was we would go beyond that damage on the radial circuits like that. And we would have to actually build a riser pole somewhere to do that same thing. And we did it 5 or 6 times prior to the invention. And I timed it every time, and it's about 3.5 to 4 hours. Every time you have to wait for stock, you have to build the pole, you have to wait on a generator, wait on a trailer with the pad mount on it. So we have it all in one. And so we have our troubleshooters just pull out to the location and they deploy it again 20 minutes. And all they're doing is putting 3 taps onto the cutouts and grounding the unit. So
like that is so right. So this is powerful. So from a distribution circuit perspective, you have your substation, which is your source. So that's where the energy, the electron flow, the electricity is coming from. And when you said the word radial, so the difference between a transmission system and a distribution system, there's many, which this is another platform we want to get settled across these stakeholders. The transmission grid does not operate like the distribution grid. The phenomena of electron flow is the same, but what we worry about and how we worry about different. Anyway, I diverge. So you have your substation and a radial line, which means you will have, let's just say, easy numbers, 100 homes connected from the substation breaker. So for 24/7, truthfully 365, we have an incredible reliability here in our nation. If a tree would fall halfway through, what you're saying is, back in the day, all of the customers that are from the tree down to the end of the radial feed are out of power. But the 50 houses from the substation breaker to that fallen tree still have power. And what a lockout or, what the operator's doing is they're clearing the de-energized lines from the live lines and making like tag outs, which means equipment is hot and live, stay away. This perimeter of our workers is safe. We're going to go in here and repair, and there's no electron flowing. It's paramount, like your truck actually has sensors to like send alarms if it feels anything, right? Or senses anything. But those 50 homes are out of power until you stand up whatever's broken or whatever fault. What you're saying is that you've developed a technology that you can roll like one conduit, one truck, one set of people and equipment where you'll tie in the backup generator. When you said backfeed, that means you're actually then feeding those 50 homes. That's like huge, right? So you need to smile a little more, Tim. No, so you literally are clearing it. So then the 50 homes get power. The 50 homes that didn't really see they did see it because the breaker locked out. So once you clear, you can turn that breaker on, those 50 homes. But those 50 homes end up being out of power for hours and hours. And that's sometimes why us customers could actually look across the street and be like, why does my neighbor have power and I don't for 10 hours? It's really the configuration of the radial feeds and where the electron source is coming from.
Yeah.
So what you did is you took the concept that took 4.5 hours, you created a mechanical arm that really positioned it so you didn't have to wait for all the other crews. All of those crews that used to have to come to support you all now can actually be working on other areas of the grid that needs restored. You guys can stay focused, clear it, bring power to all, and then put system back together, bring it all back together and dry off.
Correct.
It's huge. So, and like from a time period, you said COVID. So like, what was the time period from the moment you're like, let's create a novel idea? Like what was that time period? It's 2024, COVID 2020.
Yeah. So we had just that, what you just described earlier with that radial description of that substation you're talking about. Right. We had that exact situation happen, and it was during a heat wave, and it was closer to the station was. So we had close to 400 customers up. Again, it was during a heat wave, and unfortunately, the worst pole in New Hampshire to got hit that morning. So it was. Go figure. It was about a 12 to 16 hour ETR. We had replaced a couple of poles, and just the amount of line work was incredible. So what we did was we isolated that area again, and then, we had to go and do the old fashioned way. We had to build that riser. We had to wait for stock. It was just very stressful. It wasn't fun. And driving home that night, after the 500 phone calls, I decided we got to do something. We got to improve. And that's one of the things I love about Eversource is that, we're always trying to improve on everything. Every outage we have, the next day we're going over it to see what we can do to improve on any part of that outage. Every part of that evolution, we're always trying to improve on it. So that was the beginning of the backfeed trailer, to have a instant primary riser pole, telescopic, ready to go. And now we've been using that more than I thought we were going to in New Hampshire, was, to be honest with you. So
I just feel like just taking more time to educate. I think, we lose sight because we have our power a majority of the time. And so when the lights do come out, I guess I just want to share with the listeners and with the community is like, effectively, the moment your lights go out, someone gets a call. Someone is in charge of a crew. And sometimes it's 2 to 3 crews, could be 12 men plus, that are effectively going to be working until the lights come back on. And it's such a beautiful thing that's happening, but we lose sight of that, effective work. And also, I think from the grid mod and everything going on in our industry, transformational change, at the forefront of it, as I said at the beginning, is the majority of us utility workers are showing up to continue to provide that lifeline to society. And it can be segmented into many parts. And so I think a lot of the attention gets really focused on the new technology, the new devices, the new capabilities from delivering and managing the said electrons. Also, a lot of discussion around how we can use the data or information, aka the voltage, the current, and really the health of the overall physicality of the grid. But a big part of grid modernization road mapping is ensuring that we're highlighting that there's technologies and information that the field can get their hands on. And quite frankly, if it's done in a way that serves your pain points, they can be transformational in itself. And so I believe that this rapid pole project is an example of just that, creating innovative new tool sets, new designs to really keep the lights on. So
to talk about the area work center line crews,
yes,
if you look at the rapid pole has helped us with the line work, your planned work, adherence. It's now, you're not losing so many guys in the middle of the night. If you, for the supervisors out there that are planning the work, they've secured, maybe a flaggers, police detail, planned outages, NRAs, all sorts of stuff. But when you have a pole wiped out in the middle of the night or early morning, that plan's out the window for that supervision for that area work site. So, to get the wire up safely and energized, you can plan better the pole set and wire transfer.
So what you're saying is not only is it a great restorative emergency technology tool, it is actually very effective and helpful for the planned and overall maintenance and inspection of said facilities, which is also a big, probably, an O&M efficiency,
Right.
which is something, us utilities are driven by. How do we reduce the O&M and, ensure the infrastructure stays? So that's even a great point to share. So not only is it restorative, now you're helping your planned outage work, which is a very important thing.
Right.
And I guess there's a lesson there, right? Like you had, and I always say this about data and like data analytics. Darn it, I told myself I wasn't going to bring it up. But when you're starting to study the power of data, you literally are trying to solve one solution. And you effectively work and develop an algorithm that like gives you an answer. But what you find in that process and that journey, you actually are creating multiple solutions to problems you didn't know you have. And that's an example of doing that exact thing. You went out to restore quickly for an unplanned outage, and now you're making effective work crews during those times of need. So I guess I'm going to pick your brain one more time from your journey. So you're driving home and you're frustrated after a sweltering hot day. Like, how can I come to be? What was the type of kind of engagement from your idea? So the ideation, which is happening a lot in utilities, is like, everyone bring your ideas to the table so we can effectively hear them and then, get them funded and resourced and like make them actionable. Was there a process in house, or was it just kind of like this was like a great idea and everyone jumped in and like effectively went, or did Eversource kind of walk you through like how to really embrace that, and are there teams set up for that type of engagement?
It was the support I received, Liz. We started with the idea, we put it into a print and came up with an idea. And then I presented it to the executives and saying, I think we should do this a shot. And, they were behind it 100%.
Yeah. And I think just from our listeners and all those innovative minds inside the utility space that come up with great ideas, one thing that hinders a lot of progress is not being able to identify all of the benefits before they are done. And I think one of the big transformations that's happening inside the utility along this grid modernization road mapping is understanding that there will be an increase in a resource or monetary needs to develop and create, as well as the people and the personnel. So the who and really the how will cost an upfront cost. However, that kind of going after solution A, but solves multiple problems, can drive out costs that have yet to be defined. So it's really that innovative entrepreneurial spirit that we need to really adapt internally. And I'll just say every person in themselves, and Tim, you showed up, you're a technician at heart, you did your job, you put the lines, but you had that innovative spirit and you had the ability to manage that once it's created. And I think each one of us as individuals can really bring that to the table. So having executive leadership and that insight to drive that thought is really powerful. So anyway, I'm done telling you how great you are. No, I'm not. So, like, from your perspective, any lessons learned or any, ideas for those listeners of how they could drive some innovative project like this, and then really any words on, how to get the word out about this awesome rapid pole deployment?
There's a lot of smart people in our industry, as you know, Liz. The people that were with me on the stage at the AEIC, very smart and talented people. So it was my honor to be able, to share the stage with them. That's for sure. For the people out there that just have an idea, bring it forward. Like I said, there's some very smart people we work with, and it's just been an honor for me to be, attached to this project and see it come to life.
So I love it. So if you have an idea and you believe in it, bring it forward. Don't keep it quiet. So I love it. Well, I want to say thanks again for coming on and sharing this, and I look forward to hearing any type of response. And then for all of you listeners, please reach out to myself or even Tim to kind of get more information about the rapid pole. And of course, until next time, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Cook, signing off.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of the Grid Mod Pod. Thanks for tuning in. We hope today's conversation got you thinking about new and creative ways to improve our power grid. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to hear new episodes. This podcast is brought to you by AEIC, the place where operations leaders come together to share knowledge and provide guidance to the electric utility industry. We'll be back with a new episode soon. Until then, keep powering on.